Back in 1776, America was on the edge of a cliff. But it wasn't on the brink of independence. It was on the brink of total confusion. And then this 147-page pamphlet comes along, Thomas Paine's Common Sense, and it changes everything. So today, we're going to break down how this one little document didn't just make an argument for change. It literally lit the fuse for a revolution.
I mean, just try to picture the scene. It's early 1776. The American colonies are already fighting the most powerful empire on the planet, Great Britain. Blood has already been spilled at Lexington and Concord. But even so, most colonists are terrified of making that final break. They still think of themselves as Englishmen. So the challenge was huge. How in the world do you convince an entire people to cut ties with their whole history and take a leap into the dark, terrifying unknown of independence?
Well, the answer, and it's kind of hard to believe, came in a 47-page pamphlet. Common Sense. Just exploded onto the scene. It sold hundreds of thousands of copies. It was being read out loud in taverns, on street corners, passed from one person to the next. And the key thing was, it wasn't written for some high-minded philosophers. It was written for regular people, for farmers and shopkeepers. For the very first time, someone was putting into plain, powerful words what so many people were feeling but just couldn't quite put their finger on.
Now, Paine's strategy here was just brilliant. He knew that before he could ever build up the case for an independent America, he had to first completely demolish the very foundation of British rule. And that meant taking aim at the biggest target of all, the idea of a king. He starts off by drawing this incredibly sharp and powerful line in the sand. Society, he says, that's a good thing. It's natural. It comes from us wanting to work together. But government? That's a whole different beast. He says it's born from our wickedness. So right away, he reframes government not as some divine gift, but as a necessary evil, something we only have because we need to restrain our own worst impulses. His argument is basically that if we were all angels, we wouldn't even need a government. And he uses this incredible metaphor. Government is like clothing. It's a sign that we're no longer in a perfect, innocent state. The very existence of palaces and kings proves that we've fallen from paradise. It's such a simple but powerful idea that turns government from something you're supposed to worship into something you should only tolerate at best. And with that groundwork laid, Paine just unleashes this all-out assault. He says having a king is totally unnatural. We're all born equal, right? He even uses the Bible to argue that God himself is against the idea. He calls passing down power through family lines an insult to future generations, forcing them to be ruled by what he calls fools or rogues. And he claims the very first kings in history were nothing more than the biggest bullies in their tribe. And you've just got to love his wit here. He's completely ridiculing the idea that you can inherit the right to lead. He says nature itself makes fun of the system by so often giving you a weak heir, an ass, from a strong king, a lion. It's just a simple, unforgettable image that makes the whole idea of inherited power look completely ridiculous. So what about the biggest argument for having a king? The idea that it prevents civil war. Well, Paine just hits back with cold, hard facts. This number, 8. That's how many civil wars England had suffered through since the conquest. So in other words, the one thing the monarchy was supposed to be good for, it was a complete and total failure. Okay, so after tearing down the entire concept of kings, Paine turns to the colonists' biggest emotional roadblock, this hope that they could just patch things up with Britain. Paine argues that any talk of reconciliation isn't just a bad idea, it's a dangerous lie. Paine goes right for the jugular. He takes on the most powerful emotional argument for staying loyal, this idea that Britain is the parent country. This was a belief that ran deep, and Paine knew he had to shatter it if he was going to get anywhere. And here's his countermove. It's genius. He zooms out. He says, look, America isn't just some kid of England. It's a refuge for people from all over Europe who are running from tyranny. And yeah, that includes English tyranny. He's creating a totally new, independent American identity. We're not Britain's child. We're a safe haven for all of humanity. Then he just completely deconstructs this myth of British protection. He says Britain never protected the colonies out of love or some kind of family bond. Nope. It was all about self-interest. As he puts it, Britain wasn't protecting Americans from their enemies. It was protecting its own business interests from Britain's enemies. And then, oh man, he makes it deeply personal. He's talking directly to the reader. He asks, has your house been burned? Has your property been destroyed? And he says, if you've been through that and you can still shake hands with the murderers who did it,
then you're not just making a political mistake. You're failing as a human being. It's a betrayal of your family, your friends, and everything you stand for. And this is his thundering conclusion on the whole matter. For Paine, the time for debate is over. The violence that's already happened has made going back impossible. He says that nature itself, through the voices of those who have died, is screaming for one thing and one thing only. It's time to part.
But look, Paine was smart. He knew it wasn't enough to just tear everything down. You have to give people a positive vision for the future. You have to show them that independence doesn't mean chaos. It means a chance to build something brand new, something better.
So he gives them a blueprint. He doesn't just complain, he has a plan. He calls for a continental charter to guarantee everyone's rights, and for a Congress where every colony gets an equal say. But the real genius is in those last steps. He imagines this public ceremony where they literally place a crown on the law books, and then they smash the crown to pieces and scatter it to the people. It's pure political theater, designed to replace the image of a king with the ideal of the rule of law.
You have to remember, this is a world dominated by kings. And Paine offers this radical new answer to the question, so, who's going to be the king of America? And his answer is, nobody. In America, he says, the law is king. That one idea, that no person is above the law, would become the absolute foundation of the new American Republic.
So yeah, Paine was writing for a very specific moment in 1776, but the power behind his arguments, the principles, man, they still echo all the way to today. See, Paine framed the American cause as something way bigger than just a dispute over taxes. He said this was a cause for all of humanity. He called on America to become a refuge from oppression, an asylum for mankind. And that vision has really shaped America's identity and its place in the world ever since. And this right here? This might be his most audacious and lasting claim of all. We have it in our power to begin the world over again. He saw this revolution as this one-in-a-million shot in human history, a chance to hit the reset button. It's a statement of incredible hope, but also a statement of immense responsibility. In the end, Paine's pamphlet was so much more than just a pamphlet. It was a challenge to think for yourself, to question the authorities, and to take on the responsibility of building a better, more just society. It was a direct challenge to his generation. And I think the question it leaves for us is, how do we answer that challenge today?